I think films are like love. It's like love, you know. Uh, it's difficult to know why you do one film instead of another. Why one idea instead of the other. But what you know, I was a couple of years ago. I was in Spain, in San Sebastian, in what they call the Basque Country, and there was conflict happening at that moment. There were kidnappings, shootings, you know, because the Basque Country wanted to be independent from Spain. And one night we were having dinner, and you know, it was a group of intellectuals. They were discussing the state of Spain, and one of the guys said, you know, I've been to South Africa during the Truth Commission, and what Spain needs is a Nelson Mandela to unify the country. And I thought this is fascinating. That somehow, from his perspective, Nelson Mandela can resolve the problems in Spain. And I thought that perhaps is true, but also I think it's a little bit of a myth. There is a perception that South Africa is a miracle country, but there were no miracles.
I remember when he came out of prison, I was there covering the story, and the great anxiety of a lot of people was that he simply couldn't possibly live up to this enormous, legendary myth that had been built up about him.
And I'll never forget being in front of the Union Building in Pretoria, along with many other Americans. But I saw it in a way that the others did not see it, because I was a soldier. And what moved me so deeply, and I've never forgotten, is that the first ones to come up were the generals. And I said, God, I've lived to see this.
I knew at that moment our world had changed. And it was an unknown future. But it had to be a future that was better than our past.
My duty is to raise issues and questions and to provoke society into some kind of discussions. I think the documentary is almost, you know, when you are about to jump into a swimming pool, I don't swim, but you know, the springboard. I think my films are like that. And I think this film is like that. It's to open up all those questions about reconciliation, memory, history, forgiveness. What do you do with the past? What do you do with the perpetrators? What do you do with the so-called victims? You know? Because I think memory and the memory of South Africa and what has happened in this country is not something that's fading away. And I think with time, it's actually growing. People are starting to remember. And perhaps they're starting to remember because we haven't reached the promised land yet. Perhaps white South Africans haven't reached enough to black people. Perhaps the economic inequalities are so huge that people remember that moment when the deal were made and they go like, perhaps we didn't get the best possible deal. You know, so these questions about reconciliation and forgiveness and freedom. What is freedom? You know, what is freedom without, can you have freedom without being empowered economically? Can you have freedom without justice? Can you have reconciliation without justice? All these questions, I think that the questions that South Africans are asking themselves.
Of course, I remember them clearly. I remember their eyes. I see their eyes. Really cruel, vicious men.
So they bent the body for about 9 hours. They said they wanted to make sure there was not a bone left. They acted like cannibals, even to say that his flesh was smelling good. But I feel that they should be imprisoned also and go to court and answer for this. Just like anybody else who kills must go to jail. I don't understand. I'm just an ordinary mother. I'm not in parliament. I'm in flesh.
No filmmaker really likes their films to be criticized unless you're so perverted, you know. I try to spend very little time engaging with people, asking them whether they like the film or not. I never do that, you know, because once the film is done, you know. But I also have to protect myself emotionally because, you know, you feel so precious about the film, you know. If I have to use the cliche, it's almost like your baby, you know. But I think people have been surprised by a new kind of take on Nelson Mandela, by what some people say. I keep on hearing this one word, you are brave, 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 you know?
We believe that no South African should ever forget the crimes committed in its name. We, however, know that we must forgive.
Ultimate force to change others' mind is affection, love, forgiveness, not anger, not aggressiveness.
Tata Mandela, did you have to take on a different identity and become a new person in order to transcend the past?